Hello and welcome back to Retfurb. So on today's video we've got this set of Shimano XTR M952 shifters. We're going to be giving them a complete overhaul, so that includes stripping them down, cleaning them up, repainting them, fitting them all back together. So let's get straight into it and remove these old pieces of cable that are left inside the shifter. Now they were pretty well stuck in there, so I had to sort of wiggle them around quite a bit to get them out, and with this second one that I'm just about to undo now, this one I had to remove the casing so I can get inside to remove it. It just wouldn't come out for some reason. So there's 3 screws underneath the shifter, and then you can undo this bottom piece. Now when you separate it, obviously the top bit will come off separately with ease. It will just lift off, just unscrewing that adjuster screw, and then we can get access to the cable. There's nothing obvious it's holding it in, it's just the cable's probably been in there for a little while and it's just sort of stuck in there. So as you can see, doing that has released it quite easily, and now we've got access to the inside of the shifters. So the shifter itself is actually, they're operating fine, there's no issue of operation, it's just the condition of them really. Now with this lower piece, you can see that I'm just trying to wiggle it off, so it does come off without removing the lower shifter arm. You've just got to sort of wiggle it past. Now moving on to the second one, I'm just removing the adjuster screw, and I'm going to do exactly the same thing with this one. I'm just going to undo the 3 screws that are underneath, and then we can get access to the inside of the shifter again. So on this shifter, the bottom piece is actually cracked, and you'll see when I try to get it off of here that the little piece that was cracked does actually fall off. So that will need repairing, which we'll come to as we progress through this overhaul. Again, it's quite difficult to get off. You've got to keep sort of working it round to get it off the best way. There's no sort of easy way of doing it. You just sort of wiggle it round and you'll find the way of getting that piece off. So there's some little rubber seals that will need replacing when we come to fitting it back up. So not replacing as in new, but they'll need fitting back in the correct location. And because it's missing the windows for the shifters, I've actually got a spare set of LX shifter windows which actually fit exactly the same as the XTR ones. They look exactly the same, so I'm presuming they are all the same on all this era shifters. The window matches the casing exactly like the LX and the M952. So I'm going to strip this down so I can repaint the outer piece, get inside, take all the pieces out, the little window, I'm going to polish that up also. So when you're doing this, you obviously want to make sure that you're looking at where these pieces go, because there's some fiddly little bits in here that you don't want to forget. Obviously when you come to fit it up, you don't want to be looking at it wondering where it all goes back together. So now I'm just going to go over and degrease all the parts, any sort of glue that's left on there, any grease, anything like that. And when I say glue, on the top of these shifters it had a sticker over the hole which I actually removed before the video. So that was just going to be degreased. Just use a toothbrush and a cloth and some solvent-based degreaser, something like you would use in a body shop to prep the panels for paintwork. Again, just moving on to the lower piece, just doing that, degreasing all inside and out. Especially with the part which has got to be repaired, that bit I wanted to make sure that I degrease that thoroughly. So now moving on to the top part again on the shifter, I'm just going over with some sandpaper, just smoothing off this bit that's been rubbed down through use. I'm presuming the bike's been put upside down when these shifters were on that bike, and it's caused wear on top of those the parts where it goes onto the handlebars. So I just got to smooth that out, and then it'll be ready for paint. And then exactly the same with these shifter windows, there's a little bit of wear on the top, so I'm just going to smooth that out first. And now looking at trying to repair that lower section, I've just got some super glue. I'm going to push this part on, and then with the super glue you can use some bicarbonate of soda, which will almost act as a bridge for the super glue. So I'm just going to put some inside and then put a bit of bicarb in there. Now when you do this, you don't want to put it in too thick. Now I'm not saying yours are going to be broken or any others are going to be broken, but if there are, you don't want to put it in too thick. I had an issue when I tried it on, it was rubbing, so I had to go in with a little grinder, just grind that little piece out. So it was still okay, but obviously if you build it up too much, you just got to be mindful of that it might impede the operation of the shifter. So now just going over some Scotch-Brite and some solvent-based degreaser and just going over all the bits, making sure they're prepped for paint. And now I'm going to see if I can get rid of some of these scratches on the window. Now I don't expect to get them all out, but I'm going to go over some wet and dry sandpaper 1000 grit, and then I can see if I can polish them up and make them a little bit more presentable than what they are now. So I've just got a Milwaukee small polisher, just using a bit of Freckler polish, if that's how you pronounce it, and then just trying to polish up the window as best I can. As you can see, they're not perfect, but they're a hell of a lot better than they were. They're a lot less scratched. Now, fast forwarding into the future, these are the parts now all painted. As you can see, the finish is pretty good. I wouldn't say it's exactly as factory, but I try and get it as close as I can. But first of all, now we've got to go to the inside mechanism and now clean it all exactly the same with a degreaser. I don't go too mad with this, spraying the degreaser in. I mainly put it on the brush and rub it round and just get rid of any of the loose stuff on the outside. Now, you could, I suppose, go a bit more deeper with it, but these weren't that bad anyway, so I just got rid of any of the loose sort of grime on the outside of it. So now moving on and fitting the seal into the lower part of the shifter. You'll see there's a small recess section which these go into, so it's pretty easy to see once you're doing it. And again, now putting this part back on, it's exactly the same as how it came off. It's quite fiddly to get. You've got to keep moving it around. It took me a little while to get it in the right place, and particularly this bit with the cracked part back on it, I didn't want to sort of force it in there and potentially break that bit back off. So I just took my time, wiggled it around, and eventually I got there and it slotted on all okay. You can see obviously just messing around trying to get it in the right location. It's just, keep going with it and keep wiggling it around and it will go eventually. You just don't want to force it. Now just checking the operation. Now I've got some wet lube here that I use, which I use for chains and things like this, and I just put that in all around the mechanism and it works really well for things like this. Now I did actually go a bit over the top with it because when I fit it up I found that it was coming out a bit at the sides. Now I didn't put loads in there, but obviously when you're operating it and it's sort of rested on its side, it will come out a little bit, so you just want to be mindful of that. Now just fitting the lower 3 screws back in the shifter. So this one now, the main body of it is, that's all back together. So that one's now ready to have the shifter window on, just checking that the operation's all okay before I go any further. And just degreasing the outside a little bit where the oil's come out and I've been touching it with my hands. And just fitting some of the fittings back into it. And these small little rubber caps that go on there. I'm not actually sure what these rubber caps are for. I'm wondering whether they might be like an access point for oiling. I don't know, to be honest. And the adjusting screw for the cable. And now I can just clean up this shifter window inside, just give it a little bit more of a brush off, ready to fit that back up together. There's various little parts in here. You've got the little window that goes on. Then you've got the actual little dial rod which goes on there, and there's a small little spring that you've got to put in the right place so it resets itself. So again, with this, like I said earlier, you just need to make sure you sort of remember where this goes. Even if you video recorded yourself doing it, at least then you can look at that video back and think, oh yeah, this goes there, and whatever. It just makes life a lot easier. So as you can see, they look really good with that on there. And now also I've made some shifter window decals to go on there because they were worn off the originals, and where I sanded it, I took the whole lot off so I could start from fresh. So I've just made these little window decals up, which will just finish them off really well. Now again, not exactly as the originals, but I've tried to get it as close as I can, and it will look a lot better than without them on there. So as you can see, they're a little bit fiddly. You've got to sort of lift them up and down a couple of times and make sure they're lined up all okay. Make sure they're covering the areas that need to be covered. So as you can see, they do take a little bit of up and down sometimes to get them to fit correctly. You do need to be a little bit careful because they're quite small, these decals. They're quite sort of fragile, the edges. So that's it, they're all done, all back together. As you can see, they come out really well. I'm really pleased with them. I don't think I could have got them any better if I tried. Obviously not 100% original, we know that, but yeah, I think they've come out great. So another successful refurb done. Thanks for taking the time to watch the video, it's really appreciated. We're going to be getting more videos like this on soon. I hope you enjoyed it. Please like and subscribe, and we'll see you on the next one.